What if I told you that while everyone was debating whether Caitlin Clark might leave Indiana, her agent was already 10 steps ahead, orchestrating one of the most brilliant power plays in sports history? What if every injury, every coaching controversy, every moment of frustration wasn't just bad luck, but carefully documented ammunition in a master plan to rewrite the rules of professional women's basketball forever? Erin Kane wasn't just representing a rookie, she was building a case so powerful it would force the entire WNBA to change how they treat every star player for decades to come. And the most incredible part? She did it all in plain sight, turning what looked like chaos into the foundation for a league-wide revolution. This is the story of how one agent turned her client's struggles into everyone's victory, and why the WNBA will never be the same again. From the moment Caitlin Clark stepped onto an Indiana Fever practice court, Erin Kane wasn't thinking like a typical sports agent. While most agents focus on maximizing contracts and managing media, Kane was playing a completely different game, one that would reshape the balance of power between players and the organizations that control their careers. She understood something that the WNBA establishment had overlooked: the league was vulnerable. With the Players Association having already opted out of their collective bargaining agreement and a crucial October 31, 2025 deadline looming, Kane knew that the next CBA negotiations wouldn't just be about salaries. They would be about rewriting the fundamental rules governing how stars are developed, protected, and respected. But here's where Kane's brilliance showed. She didn't wait for negotiations to begin before building her case. From day one, she started collecting evidence. Every questionable coaching decision, every sign of medical mismanagement, every hint of Clark's growing frustration became a carefully cataloged piece of a much larger puzzle. This wasn't about stirring drama or creating controversy for its own sake. Kane was methodically documenting systemic failures within the Indiana organization, failures that represented broader problems throughout the league. She was building an airtight case that would eventually force the WNBA to confront issues they had quietly ignored for far too long. The genius of this approach was that it served dual purposes, protecting her individual client while simultaneously laying the groundwork for league-wide reforms that would benefit every player who came after. Kane's first major opportunity came in early June when Clark suffered her initial injury. While most agents might have downplayed the severity to avoid negative publicity, Kane did the opposite. She made sure the story got out, allowing the basketball world to see exactly how the coaching staff initially brushed off the concern. This wasn't reckless disclosure, it was strategic documentation. Kane understood that every incident needed to become part of the public record, creating undeniable proof of the league's inadequate injury management standards. When Clark suffered her later season quad injury, the same pattern repeated. Questions immediately arose about whether Indiana had truly done everything to protect their most valuable asset, or if they had cut corners and ignored proper medical protocols. Each incident became another brick in Kane's wall of evidence that the league's health and safety standards were fundamentally broken. But the documentation strategy extended far beyond medical issues. When Clark publicly voiced her frustrations, saying, "We need to do a better job getting the ball in transition," Kane recognized this wasn't just a rookie speaking her mind. It was proof of systemic coaching problems that were holding back the team's biggest star. These public statements became evidence that the current system gave players no meaningful voice in how they were utilized on the court. Kane could point to these moments as concrete examples of why the new CBA needed to include provisions for player input on tactical systems and playing time decisions. Every frustration, every visible moment of tension, every coaching disagreement was carefully cataloged as part of a broader pattern of organizational dysfunction. Kane wasn't just managing crises, she was transforming them into powerful ammunition for future negotiations. Perhaps KANE'S most sophisticated move was how she handled the media narrative surrounding Clark's struggles. Instead of trying to bury negative headlines or spin them into harmless fluff, she let them breathe and spread naturally. KANE understood that every critical article about Clark's injuries, every analysis piece questioning Stephanie White's coaching decisions, and every heated social media debate about whether Indiana was sabotaging their own franchise player wasn't a threat to her case, it was fuel for it. Each headline became another log on a fire that would eventually be impossible for the league to ignore. The constant media attention ensured that Clark's struggles weren't happening in a vacuum. They were being discussed, analyzed, and criticized in public forums that the league couldn't control or dismiss. The infamous photo of Clark at Barclays Center perfectly exemplified KANE'S media strategy. When the image went viral, with fans speculating about tampering or secret recruitment by other organizations, KANE didn't rush to shut down the speculation. Instead, she let it work for her. That single image sent a powerful message to Indiana and the entire league. Caitlin Clark has options. Other organizations recognize her value and treat her with the respect she deserves. Why isn't she getting that same treatment at home? This wasn't accidental. It was visual proof of what professional treatment should look like in the WNBA, and it challenged the Fever organization to explain why their supposed franchise player seemed more comfortable and respected elsewhere. By allowing the speculation to continue, KANE created leverage while demonstrating alternative models of how stars should be treated throughout the league. When CBA discussions intensified, KANE had already assembled an impossible-to-dismiss arsenal of evidence. The medical mismanagement cases, documented coaching conflicts, public frustration quotes, and visual proof of better treatment elsewhere, it was all meticulously organized and ready to deploy. This wasn't theoretical bargaining based on vague principles. KANE arrived at negotiations with real-world examples of how the current system had failed the league's most marketable rookie. The proposals suddenly had teeth because they were direct responses to documented problems. The medical protection proposals weren't abstract ideas. They were specific solutions to the injury management failures KANE had cataloged throughout Clark's season. Mandatory second opinions for serious injuries, minimum qualifications for team medical staff, standardized recovery timelines, and protections for players who challenge treatment decisions all emerged directly from Clark's documented experiences. Similarly, the coaching reform proposals grew out of the tactical disputes and playing time controversies KANE had carefully documented. Guaranteed player feedback sessions, consultation requirements before altering a star's role, and limits on coaching strategies that waste elite talent weren't theoretical improvements. They were targeted fixes for problems that had been publicly visible throughout Clark's rookie year. KANE had essentially turned one player's struggles into a comprehensive reform agenda that addressed systemic issues affecting players throughout the league. The impact of KANE's strategy extended far beyond the immediate CBA negotiations. Other agents immediately recognized the power of her approach and began implementing similar tactics with their own clients. Suddenly, young rookies were being instructed to document everything: every injury evaluation, every coaching meeting, every change in playing time, every interaction with medical staff. What had traditionally been handled as private internal matters were now being treated as potential public bargaining chips. Team executives realized that problems they had previously managed behind closed doors could now become ammunition in future negotiations. The power balance had shifted dramatically. No longer could organizations assume that frustrated players would quietly accept poor treatment. KANE had created a playbook that transformed individual grievances into league-wide reform opportunities. She proved that if you collected evidence systematically and timed its release perfectly, you could force the league's hand on fundamental policy changes. This terrified the old guard because it meant every organizational misstep could return as new policies, new rules, and new limitations on their traditional control over players. The days of quietly managing player issues internally were over. According to sources close to the CBA negotiations, KANE'S-Clark file became required reading for the entire bargaining committee. Line by line, example by example, it painted a devastating picture of how the league's brightest star had been mismanaged from her very first day as a professional. The systematic breakdown of Indiana's failures reportedly sparked several of the most aggressive new player protection proposals. This wasn't just a case study, it became the blueprint for understanding how outdated systems were damaging the league's growth potential. KANE'S genius was in the framing. She didn't present Clark's struggles as personal vendettas or isolated incidents. Instead, she positioned every failure as a league growth opportunity. Clark's injuries weren't just health issues. They were warning signs about potentially losing the league's biggest marketing asset. Coaching controversies weren't personality conflicts. They were proof that outdated systems were suppressing the exact style of play that could drive ratings and sell out arenas. By reframing the narrative this way, KANE transformed what appeared to be chaos into a rallying cry for systematic change. She made it clear that protecting stars like Clark wasn't just about individual player welfare, it was about the league's long-term viability and growth. The proposed reforms weren't punitive measures against Indiana or other organizations. They were presented as essential upgrades to ensure the WNBA could properly develop and showcase the talent that would drive its future success. KANE'S approach represents a fundamental shift in how agents operate in professional sports. The standard had changed overnight. An agent's job was no longer just about chasing better contracts. It was about building airtight cases, documenting every organizational misstep, and unleashing that evidence at precisely the right moment to flip the balance of power. Her strategy proved that a single player's story could be weaponized into a movement that forced entire leagues to evolve. This scared executives because it meant future negotiations wouldn't start from scratch. They would begin with mountains of documented evidence ready to hit the bargaining table. The method KANE pioneered has become impossible to ignore. Every agent with ambition is now scrambling to replicate her playbook. Teams are tightening their internal protocols, terrified that every misstep could be cataloged and used against them in future negotiations. Rookies are being advised from day one to track everything: medical treatment, practice workloads, coaching interactions, playing time decisions. The next round of negotiations could hinge on these meticulously documented details. League executives understand that the game has fundamentally changed. The old approach of quietly handling player grievances behind closed doors is finished. Every incident now has the potential to become public, get documented, and transform into a league-wide policy battle. KANE didn't just protect one client, she normalized the idea that individual player struggles could become collective bargaining ammunition. She turned isolated frustrations into systematic reform opportunities, permanently resetting the power dynamic between management and players. The results of KANE's strategy are already visible throughout the WNBA. Formal injury management protocols are being implemented. Mandatory second opinions are becoming standard. Player input on tactical systems is being guaranteed. These aren't abstract promises. They're permanent safeguards carved into the league's new operating standards. This transformation emerged directly from KANE's refusal to let her clients' struggles vanish into the news cycle. Instead, she converted them into the league's new operational blueprint at precisely the moment when change was possible. The ripple effects extend far beyond the WNBA. KANE's methodology is being studied and adapted across professional sports. She proved that systematic documentation combined with strategic timing can bulldoze outdated power structures and create lasting institutional change. Teams throughout professional sports are reassessing their player management protocols, understanding that every decision could potentially become the foundation for future policy reforms. The balance of power between organizations and individual players has shifted permanently. Erin Kane didn't just win for one player, she rewired an entire system. She demonstrated that careful documentation matched with perfect timing can dismantle entrenched power structures and create lasting change. Her strategy will be studied, copied, and refined for years to come, but it will never be forgotten. This wasn't just a victory. It was a blueprint that will continue reshaping professional sports long after this particular season ends. Kane proved that silence is weakness and documentation is power. Because of her work, the WNBA now operates under a new reality where every decision, every medical call, and every tactical choice could spark the next major policy revolution. The next time you see a star clashing with coaches or struggling with organizational politics, remember Kane's lesson. What looks like drama might actually be documentation, and that documentation might just change the game forever.